They guard you in your sleep. They're called heavenly generals, demon guardians. Or rather, I'll put that backwards. Demon generals, heavenly guardians. I got it right that time. Now, one of the ancient emperors of China was having night terrors. His advisors had his sculptors cast these to guard him in his sleep. Now, I've done a lot of research on this, folks. Many, many hours. I've never been able to find out if these things actually helped him sleep better. I do know that they passed down generation to generation to the emperor that was good friends with Mr. Ripley. Well, he found out Mr. Ripley was having nightmares, so he gave him to his friend, Mr. Ripley, to guard him in his sleep. And again, I've done many hours of research trying to find out if it helped Mr. Ripley, but I haven't been able to find that either. Now, as we're coming up, folks, here to our right, you'll be able to see the top of it just a bit. Yeah, the traffic is going just a bit slower now than I like. But coming up, we have the Mission Nombre de Dios, Name of God mission, folks. I think there's probably a couple of thousand of these across the world. Seems like every country map that I pick up has at least a dozen on it. And you can see the top of it right there, folks. What really distinguishes ours, now the mission itself is up here on the right, but what really distinguishes this mission, we have a very tall stainless steel crucifix down here on the shoreline. 11 tons of stainless steel, folks, over 35 tons if you count all the concrete in it and holding it down. Now this stainless steel crucifix, you can see the top coming through right here, and then up here at the fence you'll be able to see it really well, folks. That thing is 208 feet tall, folks. At 208 feet, another 6 inches taller, it would require strobe lights to warn aircraft. At 208 feet, folks, until Texas found out about it, that was the tallest freestanding crucifix in the northern hemisphere. But thanks to Texas, it's now the second tallest. Now, yeah, absolutely. You can't even be mad about Texas with this. I mean, that's just what they do. Now, folks, one thing that Texas can't match. St. Augustine is the oldest town in the United States. Our founder, Pedro Menendez, he landed right where you see that crucifix, September the 8th, 1565. Folks, September the 8th, 1565, he came ashore right there. They held the very first Mass and meal of Thanksgiving done in the soil of the New World. Again, right there, folks. Now this is 55 years before the meal of Thanksgiving at Plymouth Rock we just celebrated. Now, if you look over to the right above this motel over here, folks, the 1565 motel, coincidentally, you'll see that very large live oak tree. Live oak being the name of the species. That is the old senator. He is our oldest citizen, folks. He is very nearly 700 years old now. So 1565, when Pedro Menendez landed there, folks, he was already well over 200 years old. Now, live oak almost never gets to be 200 years old at all, much less nearly 700. Now, nobody knows why he is as old as he is, but the Fountain of Youth is just around the corner. I'll let you figure that one out yourself. Now, he is also our original love tree, folks. Now, love tree is a live oak tree like this that has a palm tree growing in it. Now, that palm tree was giving the old man health problems. We had to have it removed. But as we go by, folks, if you look in the crest of the tree, now that's where the limbs come together, you'll see about 8 or 10 inches of the stump of the original palm tree right there. But if you look back to the right of that, you see where the sun is hitting that, lightly hitting that grass. It looks like sawgrass or elephant grass. That's a brand new palm tree growing in, just like this one right here. So the old man, he is still a love tree. He just now has the younger girlfriend. I knew the women would come at me on that one. Sorry, ladies. But you're right to do that. Now, coming out, we have Magnolia Avenue. Today, folks, is almost perfect. The only thing we're really lacking is just some white and gray wispy clouds over the top that would really be perfect then. But still, this is pretty cool. According to National Geographic, this is the most photographed street in the United States. I believe it. You look to the right, you have that beautiful mansion. To the left, you have the dual lanes of trees, folks. These beautiful trees, that Spanish moss hanging everywhere, that blue sky, that sun coming through. Anybody want to take a picture? Now I'm going to come out of here just as slowly as I possibly can. Both directions are really great, folks, the right and the left. Look how this thing, this is just, oh, this is magnificent. It really is. Well, folks, Magnolia Avenue. The second thing I would like you to notice about Magnolia Avenue, ain't no magnolias out here. You see? Yeah, really. 1895, we had a big freeze come through here. It killed all the magnolias. Now, we replaced it with something a bit hardier, just like the old senator back there, folks. We went with live oak. Live oak's my favorite type of tree. I'm a pretty decent woodworker, and I love working with live oak. Now, speaking of working with live oak, folks, if you're familiar with U.S. history, you probably remember hearing about the USS Constitution, better known as Old Ironside. Now, Old Ironside's still a commissioned ship, by the way, built entirely of live oak, just like this. Folks, hello. Old Ironside repelled cannonballs the way that your car repels raindrops. Now, because of this, the U.S. government asked all Southerners that had land not planted into crops to please plant live oak in defense of the country, and we did. That's why this stuff is growing all over the place. Coming up next, my favorite place in all of St. Augustine, well, other than Red Trains, folks, the Fountain of Youth, absolutely. I like this place even better than the fort. Now, the fort's pretty awesome. I've got to give it to it. But this place, folks, well, I'm about due for a recharge. So, anyway, there's strong evidence in here to indicate that Ponce de Leon may have come through here in 1513, possibly even landed. Folks, anybody on here from Puerto Rico? Yeah! Beautiful. My kind of people. I actually lived in Puerto Rico for 2 years. Yeah! Beautiful place. I'm going to talk about that in just a bit. Now, folks, Ponce, of course, he was the first, the third, and seventh governor of Puerto Rico. They love that guy down there. Now, strong evidence to indicate that he may have actually even landed here. Now, we have excavations, reenactors, cannon fire, musket fire. The muskets they fire here, folks, are the matchlock. The only time in my life I have seen a matchlock fired. And I can tell you, it doesn't matter how much you big, they're not going to let you shoot it. I can tell you that firsthand. Now, they also have the Fountain of Youth. Folks, you might ask yourself, does this fountain work? Well, you see these two young people right here? They were actually the grandparents. Well, that's so funny. Folks, we also have about 50 or 60 peacocks and peahens in here. Beautiful birds. And I haven't seen them out here today. Normally they're out here in the morning. They're coming, but they've got about a dozen or so. They've got some peanut machines in the back. You put a quarter in it and it gives you a handful of peanuts. They come up and eat them out of your hand. They spend all day back there panhandling. I know every time I go in there, they hit me up for about $15 or $20. Yeah, that's birds, folks. Imagine how gullible I am for a person. If you look over here at the planetarium, they show you what it's like to navigate during colonial times using their ancient equipment plus the stars. Now, folks, anybody that needs to know or wants to know what a magnolia looks like, this waxy leaf here, the spear blade shaped leaf, that tree on the other side of the wall, that's a magnolia. I have one of those in my backyard. It's a beautiful thing. The blossom looks almost exactly like a water lily blossom. But I can tell you one thing straight up, it is the hardest leaf in the world to rake. Oh, you can't even get them up with a mulcher. Now, I'm getting ready to go up Williams Street, folks. Williams is residential. They ask that the driver not come up through here talking. So I'll be back with you in about 15 or 20 seconds. You folks can talk all you like. My kind of people. Folks, I'm in the commercial section now. I can talk again. Now, the place we're going next, right there at that red building. That red building is the old jail. We're going to turn around their parking lot and head back into town. Now, of Of course, before we had the old jail, we had another jail, and we called it, of course, the older jail. Now that older jail, folks, downtown. My hero, Mr. Henry Flagler, he didn't like that thing. He didn't like the looks. He didn't like the smells. He sure didn't like it close to his hotels. So he asked the town to move it. Now they didn't have it in their budget, folks, so he builds a brand new one right here, 1.5 miles from where it was downtown. And like everything Mr. Flagler touches, folks, it is absolutely beautiful. Now this is the back side. The other side looks much nicer. It's where traffic went in those days. The other side, of course, being the front side. And it was also the home for Sheriff Perry and his family, folks, so it had to look fairly nice. Now, is anybody out here, is most of you people, is this your first trip through St. Augustine? Okay, just wanted to know. Now, folks, this actually belongs to our direct competition, the green and orange guys. Now, those guys are my buddies, and I'm not going to talk too much smack about them, but I can tell you, and they are. Anyway, I think my mic cut out on me to keep me from saying that. Now, you go in there, folks, seriously, they do a great job. They've got the costumes, they've got the scripts. You go through there, they show you the jail, they show you the museums. And if you look at them cross-eyed, they'll probably throw you in that jail cell and talk a little smack to you. But it's all in good fun, folks. Now, we are turning left out of here. Left is back towards the old town. Now, the further back towards the old town that we get, folks, the further, the deeper into our town's history we're going to get. Now, we're going to start our story all the way back into 1492. Everybody's familiar with that date. Columbus sets out from Spain. He's looking for a shorter route to India. He wants those spices. Well, folks, he doesn't find it. What he does find is an island out in the Caribbean that he names Hispaniola. Now, today, we call that the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Well, he actually thinks that he's in the Spice Islands, folks. He's not. But he looks around for spices, and of course, he can't find any. What he does find, though, is some gold and other valuable things, enough to pay off a substantial portion of his debt. So he heads back to Spain to do just that. Now, he leaves 39 men behind him. These men have a very important job. They're to build a fort and establish a base of operations. Now, he gets back to Spain. He picks up his son, Diego Colon. I'm not a big fan of Diego. But he also picks up that young Spaniard I was talking about a while ago, Don Ponce de Leon, folks. Ponce de Leon. That guy's pretty much my hero. This guy, they head back to Hispaniola, folks, on the second of his 4 trips. They get back to Hispaniola. There's no fort. There's no base. There's no men. You see, these guys have managed to misbehave while Columbus was gone. Had been so bad, in fact, the Taino Indians of the area had risen up and exterminated the entire lot of them. Well, Columbus, he's not comfortable hanging around there all the time anymore, so he heads out into the Caribbean once again, and he lands on a beautiful little island that I have. He captures over 200 French soldiers just south of here. These sorts of here, the Visitors Information Center. Now, the other side of the Information Center, folks, right here, we have the Huguenot Cemetery. Highly unlikely there's any Huguenots buried out there. That means French Protestant. See, the year is 1821. The United States has existed for some time. We actually own Florida now. Well, we get hit with a devastating plague of yellow fever. It wipes out over 1/3 of the town's population in just a few weeks. As a matter of fact, it hits the entire world pretty much. Now, we don't have any place to put all those bodies, folks. There's 92 grave markers out there, almost 500 bodies under those grave markers. Yeah, we have to build that thing in a hurry. We move those bodies in. They're buried in there as many as 15 deep. Now, I realize this is a strange thing to be talking about after all those bodies, but folks, right here, burger buckets. Now, I want to sit with you guys. Now, folks, The reason I'm mentioning burger buckets, I get asked about breakfast all the time, places to buy breakfast. They have breakfast all day long. And honestly, I'm a breakfast all day kind of guy anyway. I love breakfast food. And their other meals are great too, mostly sandwiches, but anything you like. But one thing they really smoke everybody on, folks. Anybody on here like French fries? Yeah, I'm not much of a French fry eater, but these are the best French fries I have ever tasted. I mean, absolutely bar none. I come down here just for their fries. Now, I don't get anything for free. I don't get a discount on this. And as a matter of fact, I wouldn't take it if they did. I think if you're taking money or something, you know, to say that something's good, you're a shill. You're not an honest, you know, advertiser, whatever you want to call it. But folks, if you like French fries, do yourself a favor and come here. You will not be disappointed.
Thank you.
Well, I do get to smell the food for free when you come by. Yeah. Now, you folks may remember the old senator. I said it was our original love tree, which means that it's an oak tree that has a palm tree growing in it. If you look directly across the street, you'll see this live oak tree over there, folks. If you look up about 8 feet on the trunk of that tree, you'll see what looks like a limb growing straight up. Folks, not a limb at all. That is actually a palm tree that rooted itself into that trunk. If you look up there amongst the branches, you can see it coming out up there. Now, these things are called love trees because it's said they have a special magical quality. That magical quality is said to be that if you kiss someone under one of these love trees, they're with you forever. But folks, yeah, I'm here to tell you. For me, I'm here to tell you, folks, don't do it. Because forever is a long, long time. Just 10 days ago, we had a lady from Ohio. She emailed us, said she kissed her infant son under that very tree 52 years ago, folks. She's really desperate to get him out of the house. Now, coming up to the left, we have the pillars to the original city gate. Built at Coquina. The fort across the street built at Coquina as well, folks. An extremely important mineral that you're going to be hearing a lot about it. I know I've said that, but I keep stressing it. Now, the only entrance into and exit from our town, folks, as I said, the fort across the street is built of this as well. Now, there was indeed a gate between those pillars. To the outside, they have one of the coolest things in the world, a drawbridge. I love drawbridges, I really do. Hey, sweetie.
El señor ya lo se ve bien contento.
Yeah, folks. If you came in at night, that bridge was up, that gate was closed, they didn't open it for you, and you didn't have much chance of making it until the next day. Now, we don't have a lot of time to talk about the fort right now, folks, but we'll come back in a bit. I'll give you an earful then, I promise. But if you look above that fort, you can see that white flag, the white field with the red X on it. That is the Spanish battle flag. Now, the fort was painted just above it. See the bastion there, the very corner piece? Now, you'll see it much better in a couple of seconds when I pull up. But if you look, now the entire fort was painted that white, and in the corner pieces, the bastions, they were painted red, like the train. They did it to mark this as a Spanish stronghold. I bet that was really something to see, too. I'd love to see that thing painted like that. But we'll be back. Now, if you keep looking, folks, you'll see that flag. But here on the right, this black skull and crossbones, yellow building with a red balcony, folks, that is the St. Agustine Pirate Treasure Museum. That is a really super cool museum. They have more authentic, now you can see the flag really well now. They have more authentic pirate relics in there than any museum in the world, folks. They have the world's oldest wanted pirate posters. They have authentic pirate treasure chests. Now, Johnny Depp, he wanted to borrow a real pirate sword to film Pirates of the Caribbean. He probably wanted to play with it too. Yeah, oh, absolutely. And of course, after the filming, he returned it. No left turns there, buddy. No left turns. There's signs everywhere. Well, folks, I'm going to have to take a look here. They blocked me out a while ago, and I just barely got out with my skin. They had a blockage up here, and then they brought the trunk in and blocked out the entire thing and didn't... Oh, good. Now, you look over here, you see our big, beautiful bay, folks. Oh, and if you've never seen a drawbridge, The drawbridge is going up as well. Bridge of Lions, folks. Now this big, beautiful bay, folks, I told you the name now. Thanks to Pedro Menendez, it's called Matanzas, or Slaughter Bay. Originally, that name was Bay of Dancing Dolphins. I love that name. I'd pay money out of my own pocket to go back to that name. Now, the reason it's called Bay of Dancing Dolphins, folks, just about every day, even now, you can go down there, especially early mornings and late afternoons. There's dolphins out there. They're playing around, jumping out of the water, chasing fish, chasing each other, having fun doing dolphin things. If you've never seen a dolphin and you'd like to see one, go back there and hang around. You very likely will. Now, this is Hippolyta Street, folks. A bit narrow, with tall buildings. Now, there's reasons for all of that, folks. The narrow and the tall buildings, it provides shade to the travelers underneath. You're experiencing some of that now. It also picks up that cooler bay breeze and channels it into the town like a primitive air conditioner. And it works quite well, actually. Now we're approaching Hippolyta and St. George, folks. This is the center hub of our town. Over 400 shops and restaurants in this area. You can find about anything you like. Now, the most asked question I get asked this more than all other questions combined, folks. Where is the Columbia Hotel? Columbia Restaurant. It's this big white building over here to the right. Kind of hard to miss once you're down in here. But it's at the intersection of Hippolyta and St. George. Now we're going to leave the colonial times for a bit. We're going back up to the 1880s. My particular hero, Mr. Henry Flagler. Mr. Flagler comes here the first time in 1881. He's with his wife, Mary. She has tuberculosis. They're hoping the Florida climate will help her heal. It doesn't. She passes away on that trip. Yeah. Well, 2 years later, he returns. This time with his new wife, Ida Alice. They're on their honeymoon. Well, folks, some baby lost its shoe. This is when he falls in love with St. Augustine. 2 years later, 1885, he returns to begin planning these hotels and railways. Well, he finds a property just about 2 blocks to our left, folks. That's towards the south. He really wants to put a hotel there, but there's a church on this property. Fortunately, that church is in bad shape, so he makes him a deal. He tells them he'll build them a brand new church somewhere else. All they have to do is give him the property they're on. The folks, they jump all over that, and he does it right. Right here, now you might want to look at this tower before we turn in, folks, especially on the left side. It's kind of hard to see the canopy. This is Grace United Methodist Church. This is the first church in the United States to be built in this poured concrete style. Now, poured concrete is also known as slip form. We're going to be getting into that in a few minutes. Now, the signature mark of this poured concrete is that layer look. You see, kind of like a layer cake. Now, you also have those hand-carved mahogany doors, folks, over 200 pounds each. Hand-carved Spanish terracotta. Yes, Spanish tile, Spanish brick. Inside, you have Louis Comfort Tiffany pictures, folks. He goes all out for it. He does them right. Now, an interesting thing about that tower, I'm hard-pressed not to call it a bell tower, folks, because it doesn't have a bell in it. And it's kind of a trendsetter that way. There's several churches here that don't have bells. That one just happened to start it. We'll explain that in just about 1 minute. Now, coming up, folks, after the Methodists got their church, the Baptists wanted one. Now, Mr. Flagler, he gave them the property, he gave them half the money, they raised the rest of the money themselves, and they built it to this beautiful yellow brick, folks. Now, the brick, originally this color, but it has been painted since to protect it from the elements. Again, big beautiful tower without a bell. Now, Mr. Flagler lived nearby. He loved the sounds of the bells of the Cathedral Basilica, folks. Now, the Cathedral Basilica is arguably the oldest Catholic church in the continental United States. When we get over there in a bit, I'll explain what I mean by arguably. Well, he loves the sounds of the bells. He knows that if he puts bells in all these churches, they'll be having constant bell battles. He'll never hear the end of it. He's footing the bill. He asks them not to put it in there. It's as simple as that. Now, coming up, this, folks, one of the most beautiful buildings you'll probably ever see. This is Mr. Flagler's church, the Flagler Memorial Presbyterian. Now, this is based on the St. Mark Cathedral in Venice, Italy. I've been to Venice many times, folks. I've been inside that church many times. I actually like this one a lot better. Now, folks, as beautiful as this is, it has a tragic backstory. Mr. Flagler has one daughter. Her name is Jenny Louise, and he loves her very much. Well, of course he does. This is his kid we're talking about. Well, she's on the way down to New York to visit with her parents, folks. She's on the yacht, the Oneida. The yacht belongs to her in-laws. She's with child. She goes into labor on this trip. Both she and the baby pass away. Mr. Flagler, oh, it breaks my heart to tell this story. Mr. Flagler wants this building up within a year to commemorate the anniversary of their passing, but everybody tells me that can't be done. Folks, this is one of the richest men in the world. By today's standards, he'd be worth about $11 billion with a B, dollars. He gives them all the money and material they need. He literally, folks, puts 1,000 men to 5. It's a 4-year liberal arts degree school, folks. It is co-ed. My 14-year-old granddaughter has informed me that I'm going to be paying for her to go to school here. And I probably will, because I love my granddaughters very much. And my grandsons. I've got 20 grandchildren, kids. Oh, this is a great place. And it's not nearly as expensive as you might think. Tuition here, $20,000 a year.
That's not bad.
Oh, that's not bad. Believe me. Now, it actually opened up. Now, the way Mr. Flagler pronounced this was the Ponce de Leon. This was his first hotel, folks. It opened up January the 10th, 1888 as the Ponce. It had hot and cold running water, almost unheard of, truly unheard of for that time, folks. This place had electricity. Anybody want to tell me who installed the electric here? Anybody know? That's a good guy. Thomas Edison, absolutely. Yeah, Thomas Edison did it. Now this rotunda you see here, folks, today that is dining room for the hotel, for the college. Originally the ballroom for the hotel. Now there's plastic plexiglass sheets to the outside. They're to protect the windows behind it. You can see the light coming through, shows you some of the windows. Those windows that plastic is protecting, folks, that's the largest standing collection of Louis Comfort Tiffany stained glass windows in the entire world, right there. In the world. Now, we had one of those road shows come through here a few years, one of the big ones, came through a few years ago, said conservatively worth about $40 million. Folks, that's not the college, that's the glass in that dining room. That is $40 million worth of stained glass windows in a college kid's dining room. Yeah, that gives me the Wiggins every time I think about it. $40 million worth of stained glass. Now, if you look right here, folks, look at the front of this thing, how beautiful this is. These 15 arches, for instance, that central arch supports the gate that allows you access to the courtyard. The courtyard lets you into the interior, folks. That interior, one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Now, I've been around the world, folks. I've seen most of the beautiful buildings around the world. Now, I haven't done a lot in China. I haven't done any in India. But folks, it's so beautiful in there, I don't see how the kids get any work done. Now, again, while we were at Ripley's, folks, mentioned Mr. William Wharton, the man that built what is today Ripley's Museum. He saw a house he liked very much. He wanted one just like it, except bigger, the Villa Zareta. Folks, this is the Villa Zareta. This was the winter home from Mr. Franklin Smith, another friend and partner, Mr. Henry Flagler. Today, it's an antiquities museum. Now, they usually have several murals up here to show you some of the exhibits they have inside, but today they're highlighting their Christmas displays, rightfully so. Folks, this is the very first building and Florida to be done in this poured concrete style. Only the second in the entire United States. Mr. Smith is the innovator of this technique. Now what makes this so important, I mentioned over there at the church that it's also called slip form. Now what they do is put down a form. They fill that form with concrete and let that concrete set. Then they raise that form. It's called slipping. That's why it's called slip form. They raise that form, they fill it with concrete and let it set. They raise that form, they fill it with concrete. You get the idea. They keep doing this until they get the height they need. Folks, that's what gives it this very unique layered look, like a layer cake. This is stronger and cheaper than any other method of building out there. This is how they build modern skyscrapers all over the world today, folks, right here. Mr. Smith, the innovator of this technique. Now, Mr. Smith never built a skyscraper. He did, however, help Mr. Flagler build all three of his hotels done in this fashion. Both of the churches, the Presbyterian, the Methodist, this building, Ripley's, and a couple of others across the United States as well. And you can tell, by the time he got over here to the college, folks, for his first hotel, he's really refined his technique. This is much more polished, much more finished as opposed to this. Now this is still beautiful, folks, but this was, you know, one of his first attempts. I call it rustic. 29 windows in that building right there, folks, no two alike, and that is deliberate, not bad engineering. Or maybe he passed it off as deliberate after his bad engineering, I'm not sure. Thank you very much. Well, folks, while we're sitting here for a couple of minutes, this wall you see right here across from us, those concrete uprights you see, those are called bollards, B-O-L-L-A-R-D-S. That chain you see hanging between them, that's called harbor chain. Now, just for our fort over there, for example, the way they would use this harbor chain, they would lay that chain all across the opening of the bay mouth. It'd be laying on the ocean floor. If an enemy ship comes in, they raise it just beneath the surface. They go across it, it rakes the keel off. And if the ship sinks, it's dinner for the town. Now, folks, we're a bit further away. You can see the beauty of this place. Mr. Flagler had a real genius for this. But one thing my genius here forgot, folks, he forgot that it's 1888 St. Augustine. There is nothing to do here. He forgot to put entertainment in this building. Oh, I love Starbucks. Yeah. Now, folks, how does he fix this little problem? Well, it's right over here. This is the second of his hotels, Alcazar, today known as the Leitner Museum. Folks, this is up in less than 11 months. Remember 361 days for that church over there? This thing is about 8 times the size of that church, and it's up in less time. This is truly an amazing feat right here, folks. In here, did I mention this is the property he traded with the Methodist? Now, in here, he puts the entertainment. He has a casino, spas, black and white silent movie theater, folks. He has a bowling alley. He has the world's largest indoor swimming pool. It has a canopy over the top. You can open to the sky, night or day. These rooms, anyone can stay here. It ranges in price from 5 cents a night up to $2. Now, that bowling alley I mentioned, folks, if you've got one of those nickel a night rooms, anybody want to guess where you sleep? I'll bet you just a little bit off. It's actually under that bowling alley. Now, if you look right here, folks, this is Peter Menendez, the founder of our city. Yeah. This man, same guy that captured and slaughtered over 200 French soldiers just south of here, folks. As I said, the founder of our town, and he held the highest rank attainable in Spain. He was called Captain General. Folks, he was pretty much the equivalent to the modern day Commandant of the Marine Corps. He fought both land and sea. As a Captain General, that's his title, he was a captain in the Navy, a general in the Army at the same time. But I would like you to notice what this hardcore, high-ranking gentleman is wearing. Well, folks, once you get past actually just the tights themselves, you still have those fluffy, short pants. Well, folks, do what? That's what it looks like, a romper. Well, folks, you still have those short pants. Now, that's a sign of your status in those days. The higher your rank, the higher your breeches. Well, I don't even want to think about what the king was wearing. Now, having said that, folks, 5 cents a night up to $2. Anybody could stay here, folks. This was a daily price. Over here at the Ponce, buddy. Over there, first of all, it didn't matter how much money you had. You just didn't come in and put down money and stay. You had to be invited personally by Mr. Flagler. You had to be in his circle of friends. Now, that does not mean that you got out cheaply. You did not. You had to pay through the nose. Now, what you had to pay over there, folks, oh, I forgot to tell you, seasonal price. They only had one season, January, February, and March, folks, 90 days. Unless like this year, it's leap year, then it's 91. What you had to pay for that 90 days was $4,000 to $9,000. Now that's depending on accommodations. And folks, that's just your room. That does not include food. That does not include any kind of board. Even by today's standards, that's pricey. I mean, it's not as bad as you think, but it's pricey. But folks, that's not today's money. This is 1888 up until the first of World War I. Now you can Google this, you can convert this in about 20 seconds. If you convert that money, that $9,000 then into money today, you're going to find out that $9,000 today is worth $251,000. That's a cool $250,000 to stay 3 months. I've never been in a place like, I don't even know of a place like that. I wouldn't go in it if I did. You see, I'm kind of a klutz. Yeah, and that, you know, you broke it, you bought it thing, not me, buddy. Well, folks, if you look around, we are now in Lincolnville, named after our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln. Home of our painted ladies. You look around, you see our beautiful Victorian homes. That's exactly why I'm saying that. These are the ones being restored, folks. And if you look right across the street down here at the stop sign, folks, to the right, this blue and gray house. We call this the Jefferson House. Thomas Jefferson's granddaughter lived there. Now, I actually had about 1,000 people tell me that one of George Washington's descendants lived here, but I've done many hours of research and I've never been able to confirm that. So, folks, it's a beautiful home, but I would check that out before I believed it. Now, the year is 1866. The Civil War has just ended. We have a lot of displaced African-American Union soldiers, folks. We have a lot of former slaves freed and run away. They all need a place to live. St. Augustine says, come here. We'll give you this property for free. You can even build your home for free. All we ask is you have a job. Didn't believe it. I had to check it out myself. It was true. Now, they came in, they built nearly 1,000 of these beautiful Victorian homes around us. Sadly, only about 200 are still up. Now, about those jobs, folks, well, Mr. Flagler did a lot of that. Other people as well. But like us today, they wanted jobs, you know, to offer independence and better pay. Now, one thing that did both of those, right here, see those sailboat masts? There's a marina there, joins into the Matanzas River, goes out by the port, folks. Fishing and shrimping, paid much better. Well then, just like now, you gotta have ice to keep that catch fresh. Well, until 1923, if you wanted ice, it either came out of the Arctic by ship or it came off mountaintops by rail. It was expensive, hard to come by. Well, 1923, the FP&L, Florida Power and Light, now that building was already up, but they moved their refrigeration in there, folks. Now, refrigeration at this time, it's extremely dangerous. It's also huge, heavy, expensive, and breaks all the time. You have to have a maintenance crew in 24/7 to keep it running. Now, I said extremely dangerous, folks. That is not an exaggeration. They didn't have Freon except in lamps. This one actually used ammonia. The ammonia they used was so concentrated that it was lethal, extremely lethal. It was highly, highly toxic. It also burst into flame without warning, quite often. And on occasion, it exploded. So through that triple whammy of wham, what else could you say? They managed to freeze that water into 325-pound blocks of ice, folks. They loaded up on trucks and wagons. they'd take it out. If you had an ice box, they'd break you off a hunk of it. That's how your food was kept fresh. Now there is just a wee bit more to that story, but we're going to be going back by there in a few minutes, folks. I'll finish it up then. Coming up next, my favorite building in the whole town. Folks, these things are incredibly dangerous to ride. Extremely difficult to learn how to ride. And if you want to ride one here in town, you had to go back there and get a driver's license. You had to take the course. You had to pass the exam. You had to ride in front of witnesses. And they would give you that driver's license, folks. This is the time you didn't have to have a driver's license for an automobile. Looks like we have a wedding over here. Folks, St. Augustine is one of the largest wedding magnets in the world. We get thousands here every year. During the summer, it's kind of hard to come down to here because of all the weddings. Well, folks, I mentioned badminton back there. I ask about that every time I come through. Now, about a year ago, I had this young man. He raised his hand when I asked. At the end of the tour, he came up and said, well, I have something really interesting to tell you about badminton that you might like to share with your guests. And I said, sure, tell me. That's what I live for. Well, he said, badminton is actually the #2 most played game in the world. And I didn't say a word, folks, because I didn't believe a word of it. I didn't know what to say. But I had the bad manners to fact check him while he was standing there. And I had to eat crow. I had to apologize to him. Badminton is indeed the #2 most played game in the world. Second only to soccer or football. I love seeing kids' expressions when they see this thing. So we're coming up on the left to the governor's house, folks. The governor, his family, their associates, they lived and worked right here. And not in this house, folks. It's a replica. The original destroyed. We've had fires, floods, cannon fire, lightning, you name it. Just about everything that could happen to this building did. Well, they built it just like the old one. Built it of coquina, stuccoed it over to give it a more pleasing appearance. Folks, they left the stucco off on the corners so you could see how the construction works. Now the wall here, the courtyard wall, it's raw coquina. Never had stucco on it. And we're going to be having a quick tutorial pretty soon on coquina. I get excited about that. And if you look up to this end of the building, folks, the east end, you see that balcony. Now, the governor had one at his house too. The governor, his associates, they would stand up there. They would address the people of the town here. This was called La Plaza de la Constitución, folks, the Plaza of the Constitution. This was a common meeting ground for the people of the town, especially Sundays after Mass. Also, our common market ground, folks.
So that's all day until like 5 o'clock.
This pavilion you see, there'd be as many as 3 of those at any one time. I'm gonna have to go around. Now folks, if you look at this pedestal right here, on top of that pedestal, that is Ponce de Leon, folks.
Still up.
My second big hero here. I mentioned our home. The bridge is up again, folks, for anybody that didn't see it, apologize. Now, I mentioned earlier that I lived in Puerto Rico for 2 years. I also mentioned he's the 1st, 3rd, and 7th governor of Puerto Rico, folks. He's very much admired down there. I admire him myself. He's a tough guy. That statue, though, it's an exact replica of the statue outside the fort in San Juan, folks. I've seen it many times. An exact replica with one very minor but very important detail and difference. Now, they're both cast from bronze. This one is cast from common everyday bronze. The one in Puerto Rico is cast from the bronze of captured British cannons. I think that's the coolest thing I have ever heard in my life. Yeah, that makes me want to go out and, that makes me want to go out and conquer an island just so I can have a statue made of me like that. And if you look right here, folks, the Cathedral Basilica. Now this is the church that Mr. Flagler didn't want to have bell battles with. And I said also, arguably, the country's oldest Catholic church. Well, continental country. Now, folks, there's not really anything arguable about that. It's definitely the oldest Catholic church in the continental United States. They have a congregation that goes unbroken all the way back to the 1500s. They have paperwork in there from the 1500s, folks. But that building, like the governor's house, that building, the church itself, has been destroyed many times and rebuilt. But folks, the congregation has continued the whole time. To me, the people of the church more than the building. That's something you'll have to decide yourself. There are older intact churches, but none of the congregation that goes back nearly as far as that one. And if no one has blocked this street in the last 2 minutes since we came around a while ago, town in Spain again, of course, Avellí, where our founder Pedro Menendez was born. Avellí Street, the oldest street, formerly called Spanish Hospital Street, folks, because right here, ta-da, Spanish Hospital. This is my favorite museum in the town, folks. There's the guy that owns it right there. That's Big Nick, folks. That place is fascinating. You go in there, they talk about colonial medical problems and the solutions and how it relates to medicine today, and then they talk about tooth extractions and amputations. It gets your attention, believe me. Right here, folks, on the Trattoria, she's not open yet, looks like. And then, La Herencia here, folks. If you like the Cuban sandwich, folks, they've got the best Cuban sandwich I have found here. Right here, Forgotten Tonic. Now this is happy hour food here, folks. Coming up next, Peace Pie. Gourmet ice cream sandwiches. My favorite, they make them right in front of me, folks. My favorite is the key lime. And we have the plum. That's Karen's art in there, folks. I don't see her. I haven't seen her the last couple of days. I think she's taking a little vacation. Oh, we've got Santa Claus up here. Who wants to make a wish? Yep, coming up, we have Avellí's Gallery, folks. George and Nick Gallery. Beautiful artwork, folks. Coming up after him, after her, Joel Bagel, our goldsmith. Folks, the hardest working man in St. Augustine. Coming up after that, Mr. J. Bouvier, Antique Maps, Prints and Books. He's back there himself. Hi, Connie. Woo! And the attic, folks. Man, that is a great looking outfit. And folks,
where's the Christmas spirit?
I wish I'd known these down here. I'd have shown him Christmas spirit. I'd have put on me burrito sabanero. I love that. I just discovered that song last year, folks. It's turned into my #1 favorite Christmas song. See what I mean? This wall right here, I love you guys, I do. Now, this wall right here is made of coquina. Coquina, the thing that I keep talking about. This wall is less than 1 foot thick. If you look here about halfway up on that wall,
wow,
you'll see that divot about the size of a large grapefruit. That is actually a cannonball strike. It keeps getting bigger. People keep gouging at it, have no idea why. Now the big ones down through here, folks, cannonball strikes. Small ones, musket ball strikes. That's what makes this so important. Now this wall is less than 1 foot thick. You see how little damage is done. Coquina, of course, meaning small shell. It averages about a 1/4 inch in diameter. It cements itself together with that sand in just a few thousand years. It's not an old stone like granite or whatever. But folks, it comes out of the ground. It's soft, it's wet, like clay does. But if you leave it out in the weather for a year or two, it really hardens up like concrete. But because of those small shells, it's porous. Well, it absorbs the energy of those blows. There's no wild ricochets. There's no splitting, no cracking. There's no shrapnel flying everywhere doing injury. As a matter of fact, if it hits hard enough and directly enough, it will sink in. Now, the Spanish, they didn't know any of this. This just happened to be the only thing that resembled stone that they could use. And they used it to build a lot, folks, including the fort. Now, this saved their lives and it set the course of the histories for both Americas. Now, folks, right here, a quick thing to the side. This is the retirement area for our nuns. They've got the cutest thing that they tell people that come down and ask about it. I fell into it myself, but I came down and asked, ladies, you're here to retire? They said, we're here to kick the habit. I love that. I never expected that from them. Now, if you look over to the right, folks, you'll see that oak tree going over the fence. That first thing that looks like a limb growing out of that oak tree is a palm tree, another of our rough trees. Now, folks, let's get back to the really cool stuff. 1702, Governor James. Whoop, I think I just lost my sound. There it goes. 1702, Governor James Moore, he comes down here to destroy our fort and take over St. Augustine. Now, folks, until I became a guide, I didn't know that they had the technology to destroy stone forts. They did it all the time. James Moore, he came down here and set it up perfectly. It just didn't work out for him. Now, the outer walls to the fort, I mentioned that wall back there being less than a foot thick. The outer walls to the fort are 9 feet. Yeah, he might as well have been using a BB gun. Now, we're coming up to the stop sign. I'm going to turn right. That's going to put us on the bayfront. Now, directly across from us here, folks, across the bay is Anastasia Island. Not named after the Russian princess, but the saint. I think my volume's getting a little wackadoodle here. Now,
We hear you.
James Moore. There's another island to the other side of the bridge there. You can't see it right now, folks. It's called Bolano. You'll be able to see it in a few minutes when we come back. He scatters his cannons. Can you hear me back there?
Yeah.
Okay. He scatters his cannons across these 2 islands. That way, they're not easy targets. But each of those cannons is aimed at one small point on the fort. And after a few days of firing, bang, 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 boom, 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 this stone will start to crack. If it's granite, if it's concrete, yes, they had concrete, folks. Limestone, whatever they're using, most stones will start to crack. After a week or two, you actually have a paved path into the fort. Well, the Spanish find out he's coming. They're terrified. They think they're dead. Well, they go to the fort anyway. It's all they've got. They take their supplies with them, folks. Well, James Moore, he comes down, he sets up, he begins firing. Well, the Spanish, the very first night, folks, they come out and they investigate to see what the wall looks like. Now, I mentioned that wall up there is 9 feet thick, folks. Now, 9 feet thick. He was just making those tiny pock marks. Now, the Spanish, they said, wow, we're not going to die after all. So they're filling in those little pock marks. Now, I mentioned earlier they painted the fort white, just like this. That's the color right there. They painted the bastions, the corner pieces red. They did it to mark it as a Spanish stronghold. Well, they filled in those pock marks. They put fresh paint over it, be it red or white, and it looked brand new. The military genius James Moore, he thought the fort had actually healed itself. Yeah, that's the kind of brain this man has. Now, the Spanish, they were actually also picking up the cannonballs, folks, because they fit our guns. They'd clean them off. They'd write nasty little messages on it. They'd stick it back in the cannon, and boom, they fire it right back into the Jimmy boy across the street there. Or across the bay. Now, after 51 days of firing, James Moore is desperately out of supplies. He comes out here into town looking for him. He planned on getting it to the Spanish, folks. Now, I mentioned earlier that if you hit coquina hard enough and straight enough, the projectile will sink right in. Now, if you look against this white wall down this alleyway here, folks, down here at the bottom, there's 3 red windows. At the top of those windows, between the second and third, there's a circle about 14 inches in diameter. In the middle of that circle is a 12-pound cannonball embedded in the wall. Kind of cool.
Yeah. Esta es la parte arriba de la ventana. Esa casa yo la construí.
I think they're lost. It's easy.
Here it is.
Yep. Now, folks, this is Charlotte Street. I think I'm the only guide in all of St. Augustine that talks about this. Now, because of that, I call this a Mr. Ed exclusive. Now, folks, Charlotte Street here was freshly repaired and repaved about 8 or 9 months ago. I'd like you to keep that in mind just a couple of minutes, in this area right here in particular. 8 or 9 months ago, freshly repaired and repaved. Perfect on that. That red cap, those black and white stripes, if you look carefully, you can actually see the openings in the walls of the lighthouse. There's no glass in those windows, folks. It allows breeze to come through. Believe me, you need that breeze, even in the wintertime. That is an active lighthouse. It is the St. Augustine Lighthouse, folks. It is open to the public. If you like lighthouses, I think everybody does. You want to go visit it, please do. You go up to the top of that thing, you can see for over 20 miles in every direction. Now, I'm going to warn you, if you decide to climb that thing, it is 219 of the steepest straight up steps you will ever climb in your entire life. Now, I do it every 5 or 6 months just for bragging rights, folks. I'm almost 70 years old. So if I can do it, about anybody can. But now those windows that I pointed out over there, folks, there's also landings by those windows. You can go up, there's 3 or 4 of them. You can actually take a break at those landings, and I take advantage of every one of them. So. Now the bridge line's over here on our right, folks. You've seen it several times already. But the reason it's called that, at the foot of the bridge, you'll see them as we come up. There's 2 Carrera marble lines. Beautiful, beautiful carvings. Made out of the same Carrera marble in front of us, folks.
Nice.
I don't know if you can see it back there yet or not, but there's a hill on the side of the land that slopes gently up towards the port. Today, there is a large stone bridge at the top of that hill. You can easily tell that that hill doesn't go all the way over the port. That ridge didn't exist back then. It looked like it went all the way over to the wall. Well, James Moore, he tells his men, orders his men, to build these 15 and 20-foot ladders. You see, his new strategy, he's going to walk up that hill, he's going to put those ladders against the port wall, he's going to climb over. Well, that doesn't work out for him either. You see, between that hill and the port, there's a very deep, very wide dry moat. Now the reason it's a dry moat, folks, during times of peace, they would throw food in there. During times of attack, they would put their livestock in there to protect it from the enemy. Well, James Moore, he comes up with those ladders, like I said. Those ladders won't even reach across the moat, much less scale the walls that are 35 and 40 feet tall there. They're in trouble, but they're already in trouble anyway, folks. You see, the biggest reason that hill is there, it forces any attacking troops directly up into the line of fire of the cannons and the muskets up on top of that fort wall. Now those cannons, they're not loaded with cannonballs. They're loaded with a nasty little thing called grape shot. Now folks, to me, grape shot sounds like a breakfast cereal, but it's not, believe me. It's a metal ball, almost always cast iron, about the size of a grape, so hence the name. They put them in those guns anywhere from 100 to over 1,000, depending on the size of the cannon. The English attacked up those hills, folks. The Spanish let go with those cannons. They killed over 150 English in that first attack alone. Wound up doing many more. Well, James Moore, he shows his true colors. He deserts his dead and dying. He flees overland doing whatever damage he can. Now the Spanish, they're glad to see him gone. They're happy to see his heels. After a couple of weeks, they realize they've got another problem. You see, they haven't done anything about these bodies out here. They're starting to get ripe. So they come out here, they dig 3 long, deep trenches. They roll the bodies in, and they cover them up. Well, folks, St. Augustine in general is known to be one of the largest graveyards, unmarked graveyards in the United States, maybe even the world. Ripley's right here is sitting directly on top of that third and largest unmarked grave frame. And I kind of suspect that's the source of those ghosts that Mrs. Rawlings and Mr. Baskin saw.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I've actually Ripley's here, folks, is actually considered to be the #1 most haunted building on the Eastern Seaboard. I've got some interesting pictures out of the theater up there myself. Now, Alex. Have to go around the long way. Well, folks, one.
Apúrate mi burrito que ya vamos a llegar.
Yeah, I've actually been taking Spanish lessons again over the last year, and I'm learning slowly but surely. But yeah, I actually printed the words for this song off so I can remember, just to show you that I'm telling the truth. Let me see here. Oh, I have no doubt. Now this one, I've got the one also one accordion, but I like the one by Sexy Field the best for their adults.
Ese es el trip de San Agustín. Ahí es que es, espérate. Ahí es que es.
I've got it two different places, two different performers. So guys, thank you.
Thanks for everything. Bueno, mi gente, este es el trip de San Agustín. Este es el trolley rojo, donde pues le hemos pasado muy bien. Nos dio un trip sencillito por ahí. Se fue por ahí, eso. Y pues nada, espero que lo disfruten también ustedes.